Welcome to Content Disrupted, bold takes on brand marketing. I'm your host, Dan Baptiste, and together we'll explore what it takes to excel in brand marketing at one of the most exciting and disruptive times in industry history. Welcome to Content Disrupted. Today's episode is packed with insights from one of the most dynamic leaders in tech marketing today, Amber Armstrong. Amber is someone who thrives in uncharted waters. She was the CMO of IBM Watson's IoT division during a time when connected devices were revolutionizing industries, driving a 500% increase in marketing sourced revenue, not too shabby. Amber then went on to lead IBM's blockchain and AI applications business as blockchain was becoming front and center on people's minds. Post-IBM, Amber led marketing at LivePerson, specializing in AI and conversational commerce, which were transforming those industries. At LivePerson, Amber reshaped the marketing organization, relaunched the brand, and no surprise, drove substantial growth. Today, she's at the helm of Salesforce's Sales Cloud marketing efforts. Sales Cloud is one of the most important and strategic divisions at Salesforce, and guess what? It's operating in a space where sales and business are being radically transformed by AI, economic shifts, and new ways of working. I have a suspicion that Amber is up for the challenge. You'll hear more about this and all of Amber's secrets in today's episode, which, as the kids say, is going to be a banger. I don't know if they really say that, but anyway, Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dan. So excited to be here.
Yeah. First question, are you tired? So just reading your bio, I was overwhelmed. It seems like you have so much on your plate. How do you manage it all?
Yeah, I don't like to be bored. So actually, it's the opposite for me. Not having a big challenge actually makes me sad. It makes me tired. I am energized by big challenges and hard things.
Awesome. So we talked about IoT, blockchain, now AI. You're running at some of these hard, big problems, these complicated spaces. What is it about those things that draw you in?
Well, I love being in an uncharted territory, right? And trying to figure out how do we solve this unique thing. And IBM has, I don't know if it's still true, but certainly when I was there, more patents than any other company. We're always trying new things. We're always leaning into new things. And I was always in the growth businesses at IBM. So I got that rigor, but also that need to move quickly and to try and fail fast, that sort of thing. And then at Salesforce, Sales Cloud goes first on a lot of the things, right? We're the first ones to figure things out, and then it rolls to the other groups after that. And so it's a really exciting place to be. Oh yeah, it's a flagship product. It's been around 25 years. We try new things every day, and it's super, super exciting.
Such an innovative company. You've been there for a couple of years now. Really, in that time, looking back, there was a lot of hard changes that the company had to make and big bets that the company had to make. So everything from leaning into data and AI and restructuring the workforce, a lot of change. But at the time, it was very tumultuous. Now it's like, wow, you were ahead of the curve on every one of those bets. So thinking of your time over the last couple of years, what's impressed you most about the company and how you move through these moments?
Yeah, I have never experienced a company that can move with such incredible speed and innovation. One day we dream up something, the next day it's a reality, and there's customers using it and they love it. This incredible speed is so impressive. And the set of people that are here are really different, like a really unique set of people. I sit inside of the product marketing organization, and all of the CMOs sit inside of the product marketing organization. And the product marketers here are incredible. They can build the demo, deliver the demo. They can do it on script with no teleprompter, walking around a room, right? It's like doing everything on hard mode, but they love it. And that's the people that really thrive here are the ones that really love doing really challenging things and getting that reward.
It's almost like the mentality and operations of a startup, but it's a massive, really important global company. So it's super impressive to see in having that speed, energy, and horsepower, as you described. It's got to be really cool to be a part of. And to that end, as you look at Sales Cloud and some of the major initiatives, what are some of the things that you're most focused on impacting now here in your role?
Yeah, well, right now, as you might have heard, Agentforce is a big deal. So I'm not sure exactly what day this comes out. So it'll either be probably right after, I'm guessing, our big general announcement of our sales development and our sales coaching agents. And Salesforce has completely jumped ahead of the market and our ability to execute around agents. We did a restricted GA at the end of October, and we already have customers that are live on these things. And so I'm
Crazy.
looking at it
Yeah.
from the perspective of sales, but my peers are looking at it from the perspective of marketing and commerce. And I'm really excited as a marketer about all the things that agents will start to be able to do for us to make us more efficient and effective, of course.
What's the craziest thing that you've seen the agent be able to do?
Oh my gosh. So it's going to be a little self promotional, but when we went in and did the sales coach agent, there's this coach coaches you based on a specific opportunity and based on where it is in the cycle of the deal. So as a marketer, I love this, right? Because it's like all this pipeline we create, we want to make sure that the sellers are able to make the most out of it at every step of the process. And obviously, sales managers coach on all of that. And so the first time I saw the product, like I'd seen the videos of it, and I'm like, yeah, it seems great, but I know like it's still being built and we're working in Figma. And I got in and I did a role play on a negotiation.
Yeah.
And I was like, for sure, I'm going to be able to trip this thing up. Like,
You
I'm,
lost?
I'm going to break it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was really good,
Yeah.
right? Like it's really good. And it comes back and it gives you feedback that's like really customized, but you're literally talking to Einstein back and forth, like on the screen. Like instead of your face being there, it would be the Einstein voice box is there. And it's incredible. It understands everything you say and it compares it to what you're supposed to say. I was really blown away by that. Like it was really cool.
Isn't this world crazy? It feels like if you describe that situation, even like last year, you'd be like, no way can that happen. The pace of innovation is insane. And I think to that point, like, here you are back in the crosshairs of a really complicated value prop and it looks magical, right? But you have, I would assume, just seeing the pace of innovation, like, hey, it's almost an updated value prop weekly. So as you think about keeping your teams, your market, your customers all up to date on the vision and what's happening, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you lean in and start making sure everybody's on the same page when you're in this massive company that's behaving like a startup in an industry that's just going at 1,000 miles an hour?
A lot of it is alignment, making sure that everyone is on the same page. And things do change really quickly, like extraordinarily quickly here. And I love it. And it's also really challenging to keep up with that pace of change, right? We are still feeling our way on a lot of things. There's no one, as I said, there's no one ahead of us. So there's nothing to look for on how to do it, right? We're literally the ones making the mistakes as we go so that we're blazing that trail. So one of the things I do just super tactically that the team has given me a lot of really good feedback on is I have daily office hours. So the team could come into those every day of the week, get feedback on anything they're working on, make sure that they understand the latest and greatest. Every Monday, I have a top of mind that's recorded. And my expectation is that people either join live or they definitely listen to the recording because that keeps us connected on what's really important for that week and where we're headed. And that's the only way that I know how to really stay connected or how to really stay aligned in all this kind of constant change. I think it's working pretty well.
Have you noticed a learning curve? Obviously, as you introduce concepts like AI into areas that weren't AI influenced in the past, and now everyone's job changes, the outcomes are still the same, they're just magnified, but now you have a level of technology understanding that you need that you maybe didn't before. So have you noticed that obviously with yourself, you've been in this space, so the learning curve is smaller. With your teams, have you noticed either upskilling or trying to educate them in different ways? Has that been a challenge?
Yeah, even myself, right? So none of us sitting here a year ago were as deep and informed on generative capabilities as we could have been, right? Like they really crossed over into a new level, and all of us had to get really trained and learn how to best engaged and how to use those technologies. So we did a lot of internal engagement. But agents is a whole new, like agents is where instead of like we talk about generative as being this period where technology is helping the user. Autonomous and agents is where it's actually working on behalf of you. And so, how you educate not just our team, but also our external audiences. So, we've just released, as you well know, two new long form vlogs that are focused on the two primary keywords that people are searching on for sales agents, AI sales agents, and sales agents just separately. And that's a big part of how we're educating the full audience, right? Even our competitors, right? We're putting all that information out there about these are the things you should think of when you think of sales agents. These are the things that are important to consider. And of course, we talk about the fact that we have those capabilities and that we are very proud of the things that we bring forward to answer those. But it starts with educating them on even the things to ask. How do you consider any us or our competitors, right? Like, how do you really think about that in a way that is current? That's the big challenge.
Yeah. And I like how you frame that. So basically, you're starting to look at the questions that are being asked and almost like reframing the conversation and teaching people how to evaluate the space. And there's a sort of customer service lens that I've seen you deploy in all of your marketing forever as you think about like how do we put the customer at the center and deliver value to them. Search is a really interesting way to do that. Can the agents also educate us? Like, as we think about that, I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, wow, I bet I could get an agent to educate me on the agent. Like, is that possible as well?
Yeah, I think you could for sure. But we have our agents educating customers every day. If you go to help.salesforce.com, the whole screen is a big search box. And you type in whatever your question is, and the agent force actually comes in and answers that question and points you out to all of the appropriate articles where you can go deeper and learn more, that sort of thing. So there's a big role for that across the board.
Really impressive how you and your team have really kind of shaped how you connect with the market. I know you recently won Content Marketing Program of the Year with Content Marketing Institute. Congratulations. As you look at that and you look at what you accomplished in really building and architecting a full and content marketing program from the ground up, what do you think some of the elements were that caused you to get that recognition versus maybe some other programs that were being considered?
I can't really speak to how they made that choice, but I can tell you the things I'm really proud of in the program. So, Sales Blazer is two things, it's brand and it's SEO content. It's very much focused in those two areas and then supported by our community. We've worked with Mark Benioff, our CEO, on this. We've talked about it as product, content, and community all coming together. And the thing that's really differentiated about it is that connection between those things. Because without that connection, you have content that tends to be whatever the company wants to say. Our content, as you well know, is not built on what the company wants to say. The content is built on search. The content is built on what are people looking for? What are the questions they want answered? Then on the product side, we take that content and infuse it into the product in the areas that will be helpful for the user at that particular point in time. So if you're on an opportunity screen, there's something related to opportunities there. But the content up till this point has not been very focused on our product, much more on how you solve these bigger external challenges. And then the community side of it is the extra part. And so, if you go to salesblazer.com, it looks like it's a blog on steroids. Pretty cool. It actually is a way that our community connects with each other, learns from each other. A lot of the content is authored and bylined by the community members. A lot of it's bylined by us as well. And it's actually our way to bring together all of these audiences. And then we connect them. We have a Slack community where they're connected. There's up to over 20,000 people engaged in our Slack community right now. So what I think makes Sales Blazer special is it's not just a blog. it's not one thing, but it's all those things, and how those things are all tied together is the real beauty of it.
Yeah, I think what you've built is this platform to connect people, connect ideas, and really invest in them. And then the products become an avenue to realize that potential, right? Like, how do we make people more successful? They need to have great knowledge. They need their questions answered. They need inspiration and advice from their peers, and they need the tools to get the job done, right? So, starting to pull those things together versus some of the challenges in content when people look at it in a very functional or tactical lens where it's like, oh, well, this content is for search. This content is for social. Maybe I have community or activated an event. What you've done that's so impressive is wrap all those things together around people and then starting to think about, okay, how can I stretch that accordion and not just have like, oh, this is for salespeople. Well, it's different if you're a BDR or an SDR or a sales manager or a salesperson or an enterprise rep. Like those needs are different, those conversations are different. So even starting to expand the relevance through those dimensions has been really cool as well. So congrats. And I think what that's done now, as you look at Agent Force and the education and collaboration in this like new thing that everyone has to figure out, like having a community that can figure out together is really cool. So how are you thinking about using the work that's been done as a springboard to get adoption and really like up the skills of the community around this new technology?
Yeah. Well, a couple things we're doing. And I do want to make sure I give credit to my team because there's nothing Amber in Sales Blazer other than the vision and the drive for it. But you work with that team all the time. How
Yeah, they're
incredibly
amazing.
exceptional.
Yeah. Yeah. Every top to bottom, they're amazing. So we could spend an hour just talking about each one. And we can if you want, but
They're just so fantastic and such a great example of people that deeply care about their customers and are putting out great content for those customers. But back to your question on how are we helping the community learn about agents? There's a few ways. So we had this crazy idea. TJ on my team said, I think we could do some workshops like they did at Dreamforce for agents, but we could do them virtually. And then I, of course, said, great. What if you did 10 in 10 days?
that sounds like an Amber move for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to which TJ said, well, let's try and see. So we launched this whole series of hands-on workshops so that our customers and our employees, our sellers, marketers, whoever can come in and get to build our sales coaching agent and our sales development agent. And we launched them with like 2 days notice, a thing. Like it's really pretty wild, pretty bold. And it's incredible. We've built over 1,000 agents and we still have another session today. And so, like, when people actually experience building the agents, you build 2 agents in a 90-minute session, like, wow, that's really easy. Like, and so that's a great way of educating people and bringing people along inside the community. And that's not just to the Sales Blazer community, but we promote those through the Sales Blazer community. They then promote them on their social as well. And then for our people who are deeply involved in the Sales Blazer community, 2 things in our Slack channel. Yeah, we have a separate thread that's very specific to the sales AI conversations. And so they can go there, talk to each other, get help from each other, ask questions. We're in there answering questions as well. So that's one way, very tactical way. But we also, before we did our hands on workshop for the first time in person in New York, we did them with the Sales Blazer community. And so we let them see things first. We get their feedback and we learn, and then we roll it out to broader audiences. And then we give them access to specialists. So we have Ask Me Anythings that happen inside of Slack, and they come in and ask all their biggest questions. It's a lot of fun.
I want to go back to the time boxing concept. Like, oh, that's a cool idea. What if we did 10 in 10 days? Like, there's a forcing function there to say, like, oh, well, now I have to think strategically and I have to look at this as a complete idea versus, oh, let's test this, which tends to be low stakes. Do you find taking an idea and putting it in those parameters, like, have you done that before? And does that work consistently? Or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. I think for us, like in that example, it's low cost. We had the content already for the workshops. It's essentially we're dedicating an hour and a half of someone's day. So if two people show up, that's probably not going to be a super great investment. But we've had 50 people show up for most of these, right? We reserved the right to, if we launched them and didn't get a lot of good pickup, we would cancel if we needed to. As long as we didn't have, if we had one person, we would have kept it. But if we had some that had none, we would have canceled. But our 2-week period was our test. So now we'll go back, we'll come back in the beginning of the year and relaunch having these, probably going to do probably 3 days a week, but just continuing to expand along the learnings across the team and across the regions as well.
And as you're thinking about your goals as a marketing leader, how do you balance some of these short-term goals with the long-term brand building? Because obviously, like, there's immediate pressure. Like, how do we get adoption and scale and everything? And we're living in the month and the quarter and all of those things. But also, we have to set up this long-term vision of how we build a sustainable business and a leadership position and all the things we've done. Like, how do you balance those two things and how do you measure those two things?
Yeah. So I talk about it, leading and trailing indicators. And the leading indicators are really important from the perspective of ultimately, if you set your leading indicators correctly, they add up enough that your trailing indicators are taken care of, right? If you don't set the right leading indicators, you don't get that outcome, but you do if you set that strategy at the beginning. What's really important for me with the leading indicators is making sure that the team can learn on every indicator. So in our organization, every single person has KPIs that they are driving to. We look at those monthly. And I just went through our call on it yesterday, actually. But in the leading indicators that they're looking at, so a combo of leading and trailing indicators, but in the leading indicators, every single one of those tells the person who's executing against it, did this work or did it not work? Right? It's not about that person. It's about the thing we took on this month. Did that work? Did it not work? Let's learn from it and change it as we move forward to the next month. And I think that's really empowering for the team. And it's very clear that the team now understands how the things that they do add up to those longer term results.
I assume you communicate that, right? So if you look at the collection of activities, is this moving us up into the right? And how do we change levers that aren't doing that? But in the context of the larger effort, it's always about your part in the larger effort, but communicating both of those independently matter, if I hear you right.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. So, one of the things that we care a lot about is how we show up on G2. So, G2 is like Yelp for software for those kind of listening in. And when I joined, we were number one in 11 of the sales G2 grids. That's great. No one would complain about that. That's awesome. But we decided we wanted to be better. We wanted to do more. And so we took on an effort to get reviews at our events. And we literally have people on my team holding what we call lollipop signs that have a QR code on them.
You got to get the ones that spin around at the cell phone store too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And they offer people, you can get a hoodie, you can get a zig. There's lots of different things we give away for it. And we talk about like who drove the most, right? And how successful was this event? And we celebrate the fact that lots of people left reviews. And those reviews add up over time. And we now are number one in 38 of the
Wow.
grids.
And how long did that take?
We did it in maybe 6 months to a year.
Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah. There's not a lot more grids we can win on. So we're not
Now
gonna
you're going to
come back.
hold your spot though. It's, you
Yeah,
can't,
I'm not gonna come back to you next year and say, no, it's 60. There's just not funny. Like
you have to start creating categories so you can win more.
we're maxed out on the number of grids we can win on. But it's a great example of like celebrating what the team's doing in a very small way. And we had huge lines of people getting the hoodies. We had much more demand for it than we expected at Dreamforce, not this last year, but the year before. And like we had fun with customers while they were in line and we like tried to hurry it up as much as we could. And then that landed in us having this really great outcome. And then the bigger picture, it's not about just winning the grids. It's about the fact that G2 is really important for search. And I care a lot about search. So when companies are searching, if they search for XYZ software, they're most often going to land on G2 and one of the first links. And I want our representation there to be as good as possible because I want to be in the conversations that are happening where my sellers are never engaged. I want to be in that digital conversation. And so all of these little things add up to really big outcomes. We've seen a big increase in our organic traffic, not just from G2, obviously from the work you and I are doing together on SalesBlazer, but huge increases in our organic traffic. And our organic traffic had been in decline for years. So it's meaningful impact.
Yeah. And that's so important. There's a parallel there too. When you think of how you run your organization, where you're asking yourself, what is the big picture and what is the role of each individual in achieving that big picture? You can almost apply that same logic to the ecosystem, right? Like, what is the ecosystem? People have a lot of questions. And what are the dynamics? What are the roles of each of those things, whether it's showing up in organic listings, showing up in G2 listings, so that the big picture is we're there as the authority in every possible scenario that we can be. So there's a role of all of these different dimensions. So almost breaking apart the job into components and then making sure every one of those things are running, but those components are working together to drive to the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Want to change gears. I think you're in a fun position where you get to market to salespeople, and there's historically this friction where you have marketers and salespeople at odds with one another, typically because you have conflicting goals and credit and attribution. That's probably the root of the problem. But arguably, a lot of marketers don't understand what motivates salespeople. They think it's typically all money and they're off just chasing dollars. And it's not always the case, especially as I'm sure as you've dug into the community and you've seen folks interact with one another and the care that they have and all that. So what have you learned maybe that surprised you about salespeople as you've really started to dig in and understand this community of people?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of a leg up in some ways because I've worked really closely with sales for my whole career. And we can talk about some of the ways I've done that really successfully. So I feel like I've had a really good understanding. And it's not so much that sellers care about their commission. They do care about commission, obviously. We all care about how we're compensated, but it's much more that they care about winning and they care about like being successful and having their customers be successful. And so that's where we focus a lot in our partnership with our internal sales team is helping them help their customers. And right now, the biggest thing we can do is help their customers understand Agent Force. And so that's why we do things like the workshops we talked about earlier.
And I think that's a key concept when it's like, how do we help people win and how do we win together? Right. So when you look at maybe some of the dysfunction that may be taking place in other organizations that don't have a healthy relationship, what are some things that you would recommend starting to do or starting to implement to build that like shared winning culture? Are there any recommendations there?
The most effective way that I've been able to drive alignment with the sales organization is through account-based marketing. And I started this at IBM. I did it at LivePerson as well. We're doing a little bit of it here at Salesforce, although it's a little bit of a different motion. And it's really working very closely with the sales team to decide what are the accounts we absolutely want to win. And we agree, okay, we're going to go put the majority of our effort against these accounts and not generic activities. Then that drives a lot of really good dialogue. It drives a lot of back and forth. The slowest part of setting up account-based marketing in a true fashion is in driving that alignment with sales and having the conflicts over which regions are we going to focus on, where are we going to put the priority, which accounts, which industries are our biggest priorities, and having those conversations is a slow part of the process. And then actually turning on the marketing campaigns behind that is actually pretty easy. And then you just show, all right, great. These are the accounts we wanted to go after. Here's where we are in going after those accounts. Not all those accounts are in the market, right? So some of them you're never going to get to touch. But you can say, hey, have I touched them? Have we had a digital outreach to that audience and have they engaged in some way? Then it moves through the normal funnel. But having that transparency and visibility is really helpful. And it's not at all ever a conversation of, marketing versus sales from a results perspective, right? I'm responsible for the overall pipeline number. And so I'm very much focused on have we driven the right activities to drive that overall number. And I spend probably more time on our internal teams than I do a lot of ways on our external marketing.
What's interesting about that, if you think of just going through that exercise and you phrased it as like generic activities versus account-based marketing, but really what you're doing is you're forcing sales and marketing to put the customer at the center versus the product at the center, right? So you're saying like, okay, how can I look at specific accounts and ask the question like, why would this specific account work with us? And what would make them incredibly successful? And how do we design our message around that? Search is the same thing, right? So when you think of what are the questions people are asking and how can I help be a really good answer for those questions? So when you look at the multipliers on growth that you've been able to inject in every stop that you've been able to get to, it's largely by not saying like, how do I push this message more aggressively? It's more like, how do I diversify this message in a way that creates relevance for each one of my audiences and helps support them and make them successful, if I hear you correctly?
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned competition and you're starting to look at a really like cluttered environment, right? Where your AI is a little undefined and it is very ubiquitous. And it also allows a lower barrier to growth for companies to step into spaces that are confusing and the barrier to entry is very low. So, how are you thinking about competition from a Salesforce standpoint? Are you auditing? I know we're looking at it from an SEO standpoint, but how do you think about competitive positioning as a leader of an organization that loves to be number one?
We love to compete. And from a SEO perspective, we're really clear on who's ranking for which keywords. And we are actively going after those keywords and have had a lot of success in getting number one rankings and certainly page one rankings for those keywords. So we're implementing lots of things from the external perspective, but also on the agent side of things, we're really opening up everything to customers to see what agents are, to experience it themselves. There's many low cost, no cost ways to engage with agents. We have such a great product here. Because our baseline product is so good, Agent Force is really incredible. And so, what that means is that if we can teach people how to use Agent Force built on this great platform, they are going to be able to be so much more successful, so much quicker. And so, back to your point on competitive, we just want people to experience it because the product will sell itself when they see what it can do. We invite bake-offs. So if a company is starting down the agent path with another company, we're like, hey,
Put your
try
money
it.
where your mouth is.
The product is that good
Yeah.
that I can do everything I want to be in those conversations digitally where our sellers are not engaged. But when our sellers are engaged, when customers are experiencing, the product has already been built with a really competitive lens on a really great platform. And so we just encourage it and we just try to be really transparent.
That's great. And we talked a lot about the team. Can't state enough how great of a team that you've built. And I think as leaders, especially in this climate where we've all faced this shift in how we work, where there's a lot of remote workers, we're not sitting next to each other directly as much as we used to. But that being said, I just see tremendous growth, tremendous empowerment that you have. I mentioned you all winning the Content Marketing Program of the Year, and Mel Lou got invited to speak. And I was terrified for her, to be honest. And she was like so cool about it. She's like, oh, no, it's good. I'm like, do you know there's like 2,000 people there? Like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm flying out. And I was like seeing her up there and she just shined. Like, it was so cool to see. But I see that up and down your team, like you empower people in their growing and you've done that in other stops as well. So like, what is your secret today to like allow that to happen? Because it's not just happening with one person, but it's happening with multiple.
Yeah. Mel is incredible. She's a great example of someone that is really eager and ambitious to learn and grow and try new things and continue experimenting. And I just look for people who have that as their core DNA. And we just let them try things. We just let them experience and we give them lots of opportunities to stand in the front of what they've been doing. Every slide I have ever shown to our CEO on Sales Blazer has been built by Mel Lou, right? Like she's the one that is driving a lot of that, and she sets the example for her team. And so Mel's team is fantastic because of everything Mel has learned, and she is a great mentor to the rest of her organization. And so for me, it's really about that, like having the right leadership team in place, making sure that we're all really closely aligned and working together, and that I'm accessible to them and to their teams. That's the key to how we do it, right? Like, I have such an incredible leadership team that they make my life very easy.
So, all right, you have the leadership team. That is part of the battle, but then you have to unlock talent from folks like Mel. Like, do you have any guidance there on like, okay, we have really strong leaders that I want to take to the next level? You mentioned empowering people and allowing them to stand in front of their work. Like, are there any other advice or tools or approaches that you have that have been successful?
I ask a lot of questions, a lot of questions. One of the things, this is like a total shortcut that I've taught my team, but almost every question you get from an executive is who, what, when, where, why, something along those lines. And my team knows that's what I'm going to ask, right? I'm going to ask one of those questions in some way, shape, or form.
So you better have all five answered. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, it's what they do, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very simple framework, right? The 5 W's or whatever, right? But when you do that with consistency, it teaches the team to always think about the broader context of the thing that they're working on. And why are we doing this? Like, well, we're doing it for this small goal that leads up to this larger goal. And just it teaches them to think in that way. And Salesforce naturally is just a really collaborative environment. And so it's important that they collaborate with others. They're doing a lot of things to help. We have service blazers and data blazers and agent blazers, all these different blazers coming online now. And my team's doing a lot to help those teams be successful as well.
I think there's something also interesting there as you think about accountability. If you have all those answers, and I'm starting to see a pattern here. If I was going to build a Amber agent, it sounds like there's a few ingredients here that are consistent. And one is communicating your role and your role in the bigger picture, and then sharing the impact of your role and sharing the impact of the bigger picture. And starting to see the pieces and components, measuring the effectiveness, and then looking at the overall growth. And I think a lot of organizations can fall short. And even as somebody in those organizations, it's really unfulfilling if you're doing a role that you don't have larger context of. You're like, I don't know why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it, right? Like I was told to do this. I'm doing it instead of saying, hey, we have a shared mission. We all want to win. And man, I got to do my job if we're going to win, right? So I think what's really cool to see, and it's consistent, right? So if you look at everything you've described today, everything has those same ingredients. You want to win, and you understand if you win in one area, that's not winning, right? So starting to think of how everything comes together.
It comes down a little bit to my philosophy on leadership, right? So I started this at IBM, and it's a leadership pact that I developed with my leadership team of our commitments out to the rest of the organization. And we were really clear our role are these things. I'll tell you what those are. And then the role of everyone else is the other things. Our role as leaders, and depending on the level of leader you are, you spend more of your time in different areas, but it's setting the vision, communicating, prioritizing relentlessly, coaching, and removing blockers. If as a leader, I do those 5 things and obviously set up the metrics so everyone knows if they're winning or not, so they're always learning. If we as a leadership team set up that methodology, then everyone knows what they're supposed to do, right? And I can test myself when I feel stressed or engaged. I can look back at that list and say, like, okay, have I not been communicating as much as I need to? Have I not set the right vision? Do I feel like there are blockers for me or the team that are standing in the way? But I can really check that list to understand what's not working in that particular moment.
It's comforting, right? Like, especially when you look at dropping yourself into these environments where AI doesn't have a whole bunch of success metrics because it's new, right? Like, same thing when you were within the IoT space or blockchain, it's like you're building the future. So you don't have a bunch of proven case studies to fall back on. There's no playbook, to your point. You're out there taking all the arrows. So having a framework like this allows you to lead in uncertain times. And as things are stressful and you're feeling either anxious or tired or burnt out, chances are you don't have the answer to some or one of those things on the list, I would
Yep.
assume. And as we're wrapping up here, one, this has been amazing. Thank you. And I think the cool part about this conversation is the pattern, right? And I think as we think about what we can do as leaders, kind of simplifying the noise to see like, okay, I know how to adapt in all these different situations, environments, because there's a framework, right? And if I hold myself to that framework, I hold my team to that framework, and we're communicating and measuring and growing together, chances are we're going to be successful. And you've proven that time over time again. So any final thoughts for high growth that are looking to grow teams, be successful, grow revenue? Anything you would advise on the like do and don't do list as we wrap here?
I think all the do is take on the biggest challenge you can think of, right? Like, I feel like at Salesforce, I said this to someone, we're looking into our FY26 plans, which we're on a future calendar. And, we're like, what are we going to do with SalesBlazer this year? Because we've solved organic search. Like, we really have. It's not to say there won't be new terms we need to focus on. It's not to say there won't be new ways we can continue increasing our rankings inside of where we are. It's never a done job, but we took that on as an audacious goal. And you all at Skyward have been just incredible partners for us in accomplishing that goal. That's audacious. Like, to say, like, we're going to conquer organic search.
In like 18 months or 12
Yeah.
months. Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah. We're going to have 1 million sales blazers. Well, we have 300,000 sales blazers already, right? We're on our path to get there. And I love that, taking on big challenges, because you may not hit them all, but you'll get really darn close. Right. And that's really exciting. You'll get as close as you possibly could. Anyway, that's guaranteed. I think the thing that I would say also, the not to do, is not be afraid of feedback. And sometimes there's friction in an organization that's unspoken, but it's there, and you're able to avoid it, because typically people like to avoid conflict, especially in a work environment. Lean into it though. And I don't mean it in like an aggressive, terrible way, but like really lean into like, why is someone not on board with this? Why are they resisting this change? And how can you understand that position better and help them to see where you're headed? And then the phrase I love, to learn this from Michelle Peluso at IBM, is this idea of even better if, right? So my idea would be even better if I added this amazing thing that you just spurred in me. And that just creates less defensiveness, but also just gives you an opportunity to think like, none of us have it all figured out.
Especially right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we can all make it better. We can all grow and learn. And so how do we do that in a way that is inclusive of others, in a really open-minded way?
I love that. I think the mistake anybody has as you think about avoiding conflict is you do that enough times and you just don't have a relationship with people, whether it's personal or professional, because you kind of stuff those feelings down, right? And then you just move on with your life and pretend like they're not there until you have a problem, right? So if you want to get better, you should crave feedback, coaching, all those things, whether it's having mentors like yourself, live coaches. The best athletes in the world are still coached hard. Here in New England, you had Tom Brady, who you would see him being coached at the age like 39. He's coached like a 20-year-old. And you're like, if that's the case, then I should also seek out people who know more than me and crave that feedback as long as you trust the person delivering it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great diagram that talks about where to trust feedback. Does this person have experience? The person who's delivering the feedback, do they have experience? Do they care about me? And are they aligned on the outcomes? I think I might have that last one a little bit off. But you can see when these things come together, it really is like, yes, this is valuable feedback. Like, this is feedback I should take. If feedback's coming to you from someone that doesn't care about you, that doesn't have your best interest in heart, then maybe don't take that. Go find somebody else to get feedback from. But if you can align up on those things, yeah, I've just learned so much from feedback. And sometimes the feedback's not really fun to hear, right? Right. Feedback that's not fun to hear is usually the most valuable.
Absolutely. Well, this has been amazing, Amber. I'm thankful for your partnership, your friendship, and your knowledge here. Like, I think all these things, if we can implement them as leaders, we'll all be better off. So really great time today and appreciate all the insights.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. It's been so much fun to partner with you for many years now. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Talk soon.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Content Disrupted, brought to you by Skyward. To stay up to date on the latest ideas and insights in brand building and content marketing, visit our website at skyward.com. That's skyword.com. Join us for our next episode, where we'll continue to challenge marketing norms and inspire you with fresh strategies for growing business through brand storytelling.